Jessie was too old for dolls. At least that's what her mama told her. Jessie, honey, you're too old for dolls. See, Jessie had gotten a doll for her birthday every single year. She had one that commemorated every year the anniversary of her birth, and they sat on a shelf that went around 3 sides of her bedroom, so at night they just looked down at her. And since she was used to getting a doll every year for her birthday, and since her birthday was coming up in just a couple weeks, she started asking her mama early, Mama, what kind of doll am I going to get this year? And the response was, Jessie, honey, you're too old for dolls. Ask for something else. But she wanted a doll because that's what she had always gotten. She had dolls since before she remembered even getting them. So the next day it was the same. Mama, what kind of doll am I going to get this year? Jessie, honey, you're too old for dolls. The next day, Mama, have you thought about what kind of doll it's going to be? Jessie, why don't you tell me what the other girls your age are asking for their birthdays? I'll get you one of those things. The next day, Mama, the next day, Mama, the next day, what kind of doll is it? The next day, all the way up until the day right before her birthday, when her mom spun around on her heel and said, Jessie, if I get you a doll for your birthday, will you stop asking me? And she said, yeah, I will. She realized she had won. When her mama said, all right, tomorrow when you come home from school, I'll take you downtown. We're going to go to one of the shops downtown. The first doll that we find, we're going to get, and that's going to be your doll this year. And this is the last year to get a doll. So the next day when Jessie came home from school, Mom grabbed her pocketbook and her keys, and they got in the car, and they drove downtown and parked right on the edge of the town. Now, their downtown was one of those old downtowns that had seen kind of a rebirth, where all the old storefronts had big glass windows, and they put stuff right in the front so you could see what you could buy there. And as they got out of the car, they looked, and right there in that first big glass display window, there was a Raggedy Ann doll with reddish-orange yarn for hair and big button eyes, gingham. Jessie's mom said, that's what we're getting, Jessie, that doll right there. And Jessie said, Mom, Raggedy Ann, I already have one of those. Can't we go to the next store and look? And her mom said, we are not wasting time doing this, the very next store. And they went to the next store, and there in the big display window, there was a Barbie doll. All right, Jessie, we're getting that Barbie. And Jessie said, Mom, Barbie? I'm 16. They went to the next store. There was something wrong with it. And the next store, and the next, all the way down the main street, and they crossed over and came back the other side until they were at that store, right across from where they had parked. It was an old antique store with lots of goods and several glass windows, but the one in the very center, when they got there, Jessie's eyes fixated. Because right there in the center of the window, there was a doll sitting in an old wicker rocking chair, a little one. And this doll, when she looked at it, its eyes seemed to look right at hers. This doll was about the size of a real human baby. Then she looked at it and looked at her mama and said, oh, Mama, that is the doll that I want. Her mom looked at it. This doll was sitting with its back erect. It had one hand in its lap as it sat in that little rocking chair. It had a big smile across its face. It had its other hand raised in the air, 2 fingers like this. Jessie said, look at Mama. It's so happy, that big smile. Look, it's making a peace sign. It's peaceful. It's happy. That's the doll that I want. And Jessie's mom looked at that doll and thought it was kind of creepy. But she said, if that's what you want, if that's what it's going to take to get us to go home, all right. And they went inside, and the man who worked the store, he was propped up against the counter just chewing gum that had lost flavor. Bored as could be. Excuse me, we'd like that doll in a little wicker rocking chair in the window. And you want that doll? Is that the one you want? Jessie said, yeah, Mama, that's the one I want. She said, that's the one we want. And they watched as he left his post and climbed amid all the antiques and such and lifted that doll out of the rocking chair brought it back to the counter. He wrapped it in some tissue paper and placed it down inside of a box, just a little bigger than a shoebox. Placed the lid on and handed it to Jessie's mom, who gave it to Jessie, who clasped it tight against her chest as her mom paid for the doll. She held that box so close as they got back in the car. All the way back home, she held that box. She took it with her inside, and she did not let go until she put it right there on the kitchen table and went to open the lid. That was the tissue paper that she was pulling off of it. And she lifted that doll up, and she looked in its eyes again, and it looked down into her eyes. And when she held it right there, she realized not only was this doll about the same size as a real human baby, it weighed about the same as a real baby. In fact, it was so much like a real baby that she moved it right over to her shoulder and began to pat it. Oh. And she went on with her stuff for the rest of the night, everything she needed to do. She kept that doll right there until it got a little heavy, and she put it down on her hip. It was so much like a real baby that she rocked it back and forth on her hip through the evening. And it was so much like a real baby that she did not notice when that doll leaned into her side, all on its own. It was so much like a real baby, she didn't notice when that doll brought its hand into the small of her back, all on its own. Because anytime she looked down at it, it was just as happy and peaceful as could be. Well, she took that doll around with her the rest of the night until it was time for bed, and she took it up to her bedroom and propped it right up tall against the pillow of her bed. And she turned to go brush her teeth in the bathroom right outside of her bedroom and change into her night clothes. And as she turned to go, she could have sworn that that doll turned its head like that. But when she looked back at it, it looked as it always had. But that was just creepy enough for her to not want it on her bed for the night. So she took that doll and she went downstairs and she opened the coat closet and set it on the shelf right above all the coats. Closed that door, went upstairs, brushed her teeth, changed into her night clothes, and she got into bed, that big comfy bed, and her head sank down into the pillow. And she closed her eyes and began to drift between that place that was between reality and dreaming. And as her eyelids were so heavy across her face, she heard a voice that said, Jessie, Jessie. She sat up. She heard the voice again. It said, come play with me. I'm downstairs in the coat closet where you put me. And it got very quiet. And she thought, is that real? Did I really just hear that doll talk? No, she thought dolls don't talk unless there's a string on the back that you pull. And this one didn't have one of those. And it got quiet, and she thought it must just be my imagination. So she lay down, and soon she was fast asleep as the night passed.